Hi, welcome to Rolling Hills Library. We're glad you're here for part 2 of Plant Something New. We have Ms. Cindy Wells here from the MU Extension Office. She is a field specialist in 4-H youth development, and a couple days ago she gave us a great start with tons of information and resources and some great ideas for starting planting. So Cindy, it's so good to have you here again. Thank you for giving your time and your energy and sharing your expertise. And I'm going to spotlight you and we'll let you take over the time. Thanks, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Anali. So glad to be here. I enjoy this part. Number one, I love gardening, and number two, I love working with youth. So this is a treat for me, and I really appreciate you allowing me to do so. We're going to just go ahead and get started. First of all, welcome. Sam, it's good to have you back. And if we have some others join us, we'll be great, and we'll kind of step back. I am going to start with kind of a review. So Sam, are you ready for a review?
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about lots of things last time, and a couple things we did was, first of all, yeah, this is the same way. We started with some tubes, and we have the cardboard. Let me take it out of the bag so you can see it better. We talked about the cardboard tubes, and why is it good to start a plant in one of these tubes, Sam?
Because they're biodegradable.
Very good. So they are biodegradable, which means they become part of the soil. They break down. So what you can do is just start your plant in here. Obviously, you have to put something on the bottom so the dirt doesn't fall clear through. The root will develop, and then you just bury the whole tube with root, plant, and all, and it doesn't disturb the roots. So your plants, sometimes when we transplant them or put the seedling we've started inside out in the ground, especially if we have to disturb the roots too much, it actually will put it into what they call shock, and they don't grow as well. It takes a long time for them to take off and actually do anything. You'll watch them for several days, and they may even wilt and look like they're dying. But this helps that. It's always, number one, it's good for the soil. Number two, we're reusing something that we usually just throw away. And thirdly, it is good for the plant and good for the soil. So that's one reason to use these. And you can actually use these to start about any kind of plant. I've started tomatoes in these. In the packet, you should have some summer squash seeds. And I forgot to mention last time, Sam, in the one packet, you have cucumber and zucchini seed. And if you haven't looked at it yet, the way to tell that is the cucumber seed is small and the zucchini seed is larger and flat. So you'll be able to determine which is cucumber and which is zucchini when you look at that, and both are in there. Now, I did want to talk a little bit. We talked quite a bit about the packages, and I'm going to real quickly show this one. This is the cucumber, but I wanted to point out something that I forgot to point out last time. Notice it says Space Master bush type. That means that this cucumber is more of a bush plant, so it will send out some runners. But your old-fashioned, what I call running cucumber plants, send out runners that are several feet long, up to 6 to 10 feet long. I mean, they'll just go everywhere. Cantaloupe, those kinds of things all have those runners. Pumpkin plants get huge. They'll take over, one pumpkin plant will take over a big portion of your garden. The reason I chose these Space Masters bush type is they do not get near as big. They don't take up as much room, and you can actually put these in a container and grow this cucumber in a bigger flower pot. Now, not the flower pot we gave you, but if you have a bigger, like a 5-gallon bucket or a bigger flower pot that's about the big around as that, you can actually put these in there. This is, it says back here that you can use it, and I'm not going to be able to show it very well because of the light in here, but notice it says the container needs to be 12 inches. So if you think of about a ruler and get a flower pot that big, you can actually grow this cucumber, this Bushmaster, or this Space Master, excuse me, in a pot that's that small. So you don't have to have a big garden spot. You can actually do that, okay? So that's one thing to think about. These don't get near as tall. They just kind of go up and spread out a little bit, but they don't send out what I call runners. Do you know what a runner is on a plant?
Sort of like a vine which fruit grows from.
Yes, it sends out vines. You're very right. I always call them runners. That's what my grandma called them. 'Cause I learned to garden a lot from my grandma. We did a lot of that together in the summer, and really some fond memories, and made me love gardening. I just love it. You're right. The vines send out long plants, basically part of the plant, and it just takes off and grows. Takes up a lot of space. So if you're planting cucumbers, there's some others that have what they call space. They're basically a bush type of vine. There's even some pumpkins I saw the other day in the store, and I can't remember the name of them, but they don't vine and take up quite as much room. So depending on your space you have, that may be something to think about. Like this cucumber, again, you can start them in the toilet paper tube and take them out, put them in a 12-inch flower pot, and grow a cucumber right outside your door. So that's one good thing. Now zucchini, which is a summer squash I gave you, the black beauty is called a zucchini, and it spreads out more. You can also put it in a 12-inch container as well. So these actually can be growing. And what I do with vines, if they take off and start running, is if you take the end of that vine and turn it back in, it just kind of circles within itself. So that doesn't take up as much room either. My grandma actually used to, especially if you want like a pumpkin, she always planted what we called field pumpkins, which are the ones that get great big. She raised some that weighed like 100 pounds. But what she did is the pumpkin would start blooming and setting on little fruit, and then she started cutting the vines off. So as it sent out a new runner, she'd cut it off. And I asked her one time, I said, why are you chopping off the pumpkin plants? And she explained that the plant, as long as it's sending out runners, that takes some of the nourishment and the emphasis from the plant. So if you cut those off, it puts that nutrition and all that energy back into the pumpkin. So that's how you get the bigger pumpkins. You trim your plant, leave just a few pumpkins. She usually left, I think, like 3 or 4, maybe 5, just depends on the plant, but left those on there and then would chop the vines off. So number one, it didn't take up as much space because she didn't have a huge garden, and also would put the nutrients back into that pumpkin. So that's the huge one. She really loved taking those to the state fair and to the local fairs and competing with her pumpkin, and she got a lot of blue ribbons with those. So just kind of a little fun story, but that is one way to do it. Okay, another thing we did is the paper towel with the bean seed. Did you plant that, Sam? Have you had time to do that yet?
Yes, I'm trying.
Okay, are they starting to do anything yet? They probably aren't for just 2 days. Or are you lucky, and are they starting to do anything?
They're kind of wrinkled up.
They're wrinkled up? Okay, that's good. Keep that paper towel moist, because that means they're absorbing the moisture, and that will cause that seed to grow. Now, what I'd like to do is I found a video on germination, and that's going to explain what your beans are doing. And so I'm going to go ahead and quickly play that. Can you see my screen, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Wait a minute. Let me stop share. I just need to check on something. Okay, that's what I was afraid of. I forgot to do that. You have to check a little spot there. Hear it okay?
Yes. Yes.
We're going to talk about
Germination of seeds. Most plants grow from seeds, but do you know how a small seed turns into such a big plant? Well, let us find out. The process by which a seed that is getting all the suitable conditions grows into a plant is called germination. When we say suitable conditions, we mean all the things needed by a seed to germinate, and those things are water, warmth, and air. Each seed has a tiny baby plant called embryo inside it. Once a seed gets water, warmth, and air, the embryo literally wakes up and starts growing to form a baby plant. You might wonder that from where this baby plant gets food to grow. Well, the cotyledons of the seed are actually storehouses of food for the baby plant. The baby plant starts to grow and the first part to emerge from it is called the radicle. It slowly starts growing in the downward direction. Next, the plumule emerges out from the embryo and starts growing in the upward direction. The radicle develops to form the root system of the plant, while the plumule gives rise to the shoot system bearing the leaves and branches of the plant. This plant is now called a seedling. The cotyledons keep providing food to the seedling until the leaves formed start making food for the plant. Then there is no stopping. The plant keeps growing to give rise to flowers, fruits, and more seeds.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. So that quickly explained the germination, and that is actually what you should see. Hold on just a second. There, sorry about that. That is what you're going to see in the bag with the paper towel and the bean seed. They'll continue to swell. They're kind of wrinkly right now. Keep the paper towel moist. They'll continue to swell, and as they get that sun, the warmth, the water and the paper towel are actually kind of taking place of the soil, if you will. But keep in mind, as it showed in that video, the seed has everything it needs for the plant to grow. It has the food in the embryo. So you should start seeing that little root that starts down grow, and you should start seeing the bean kind of open up, and you then will see a baby, the embryo, the little baby plant come out, and it should keep growing and go forward. We also we talked about the egg carton. And as with the tube, the cardboard tube, this is cardboard or paper, and it will disintegrate into the soil. Now, obviously, this is going to handle a bigger plant than the little egg carton. So keep in mind that when you grow. But the good news with both of these is you're not going to disturb the roots. So when you actually transplant those into a bigger flower pot or out in your garden, the roots will continue to grow and will be good for there. Okay, I'm going to real quickly, and I don't have any demonstrations to show you this, but we're real quickly going to talk about a few other containers that can work. You can actually make a little terrarium, because remember it said you needed the heat and the moisture. Well, if you think about a terrarium is a clear container where the sun can get in, but the top of it, number one, keeps it warm, and then also keeps the moisture in. So it kind of keeps, it's kind of like a rainforest, basically. It just keeps recycling the water and dripping down in that bottle and keeping that stuff cool, or excuse me, watered. So you can take a pop bottle or a water bottle, depending on how big you want your heat house, your greenhouse, or your terrarium to be, and you can cut off part of that pop bottle, about halfway down probably, put dirt in it, whatever seeds you're going to grow. Of course, keep in mind, you don't have a lot of area, whether you're using a 2-liter pop bottle or a little water bottle. So don't put a lot of seeds, but put those seeds in there, then just squeeze the top over that. So the top sits on top. Take the lid off because you don't want it too wet, and then set it where the sun can get to it. And that sun will warm that up. It actually speeds the germination process up. So that will happen more quickly than if you just put it out in the cold soil, because that potting soil and the heat from the sun will cause that to warm up. Another one that we're not going to have time to get to, but there is also, and you can Google this, it's called milk jug planting. So you can take an old gallon milk jug, which actually Anali and I talked about maybe doing something with that later on. But you can actually use a milk jug kind of the same way. You just slit it open so that it hinges. You put the seeds and the dirt in there, close it back down so it keeps the heat and the moisture in, and your little garden will start to grow. So there's other things you can do with a container as well. All of these can be used for starting seeds. The milk jug planting, for example, if you just put just a few radishes in there, you can actually leave them in there and let them mature, and you can actually pull them out of the milk jug and eat them. So there's different things you can do. So keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about transplanting. And transplanting means taking the seedling that you've grown and putting it in a bigger container so it can continue to grow to maturity. Obviously, you're not going to be able to grow a cucumber in this tube. There's not enough room for the roots to grow, and there's not enough room for the plant to flourish. It will run out of nutrients and actually would end up dying. So this is what you use to transplant the seed into a bigger container out in an open garden spot. One good thing again about these is you don't disturb the root. So the root system that starts, that white that it showed in the video going down, you just set this down in that root system. This will disintegrate and the roots have a chance to come out then. So this will basically, and you'll see it even as you water this, you should start seeing this tube kind of become looser because the cardboard, the moisture will cause it to kind of start disintegrating a little bit. It's biodegradable, as you said, Sam, and would work out well for that. Sometimes we buy transplants or seeds or plants, excuse me, from places like the greenhouse or even your local Walmart or Lowe's, Home Depot. Lots of places have plants. I personally like to buy from a local greenhouse if I can. We have several through the area, and actually there's more and more. I know there's a new one that I have to go visit out towards Cosby, Missouri, which is just outside of St. Joe here to the east. The pictures they have on there are really good. There's also several in South St. Joe. Leopold's has a really nice greenhouse, and there's another little greenhouse down that way as well. Farmers markets, people bring their plants and set up there. Obviously, you can buy plants at Walmart and some of the other places, but I like the homegrown plants, and a couple reasons. First of all, the greenhouses tend to toughen their plants, if you will, and by toughen it, and there's a better word for that, and it's escaped me right now, but when you grow a plant inside, you have to get it used to being outside. So if it's inside all the time without any wind, without any of the cool air, any of those kinds of things, and without complete direct sunlight, because sunlight through the window is one thing, but sunlight out in a garden spot's another. So it's good to take your plant that you're going to transplant, whether you buy it from Walmart in a little package or whatever you do, take that plant and give it a few more hours every day. So set it outside, let it start toughening up and getting weatherized. So you get it used to the outside so you don't have as much shock. So when you plant the plant in the outside, it's used to the sun, it's used to the wind, it's used to the cool evenings, those kinds of things. So if you grow them in here or your egg cartons or whatever you grow it in, set that outside before you actually transplant it. Just set it out in a spot where you know it's going to be okay, and just let it sit there in the sun for a while, then bring it back in. And you may not want to leave it out the whole day for a few days, so leave it out part of the day for a day or two, then set it out a little bit longer, and just keep it up until you have them ready to go to the garden. That's just a little hint and tip that actually one of the master gardeners told me to set those out and let them harden. That's a word. You need to harden your plants before you actually put them in the outside world completely. So if they've grown in a greenhouse, if they've been protected, Walmart and those places buy their plants from greenhouses, so those plants haven't been outside either. If you're growing seeds in the house, you haven't had them outside. So set those outside, let the weather start to harden them so they're ready to be transplanted. Again, it will cut down that shock. They'll take off and grow more quickly, and you won't see them start to wilt or do any of those things that makes you wonder if they're going to die. So just another little hint and tip, harden your plants, especially if you've started them inside. Lots of greenhouses, again, around the area. It's kind of fun for me. I love going to different greenhouses because you're going to find that different greenhouses grow different varieties. And that's where it's important to kind of research your varieties. I love tomatoes, and I love trying different kinds of tomatoes. I think I shared last time that the heirloom tomatoes have a different flavor. And so going to the greenhouses, looking at some of the varieties. Again, if they have the package, you can read here what it's going to talk to you about, if it has a rich taste, if it's drought resistant. A lot of times too, you can kind of research online. It says, okay, so the Brandywine Pink has these characteristics. And a lot of sites, especially if you get to the actual gardening sites, they will tell you, and here's a pro to the Brandywine Pink, here's the cons. One of the cons is they don't produce as heavy as some of the other tomato plants, which means you'll get tomatoes off of them, but not as many as you would some of the newer varieties. They're not as drought resistant. So if the heat and the dry weather hits, they definitely have to be watered. because they're not as drought resistant, which means they can tolerate some dryness better than other plants. And Brandywine pink isn't one. So it's kind of fun, or for me anyway, and I'm kind of a plant nerd, I guess, but it's fun for me to get on and kind of research. They come out with new varieties all the time, and they actually reintroduce heirloom varieties, which means they've been around for a long time, but maybe the seeds haven't been in mass production where you can buy them. So it's kind of cool and fun for me. I like to go out, and I think last year I had 30 different varieties of tomatoes in my garden. I just had 1 or 2 of each kind. A little side note, I told you our extension office has the high tunnel or big greenhouse out behind it, and they actually have a plant sale, and I think their plant sale is scheduled for the last of April, and they grow tons of different varieties of tomatoes, different varieties of eggplant. I think they have 10 different varieties of eggplant this year, and just different herbs and different flowers and things. So it's really fun, and if you want to arrange a time, just let me know, and I'll be glad to have one of the master gardeners give you a tour of the greenhouse and talk about the different varieties of plants and things they have. So I think I gave my email last time, and I'll give it again this time. Make sure and just email me, and we'll set up a time, and you can come out, and I'll make sure one of the master gardeners is here to take you through the high tunnel and talk to you about that, because it's really interesting. I go out there sometimes and just walk around and look and read their tags, and hopefully Larry's the main master gardener that really takes care of it and knows a lot. And it's really interesting to just sit or stand and talk to him. So that's something I want to offer. Again, make sure and let me know if that's interesting to you. Okay, another thing I want to talk about transplanting, and then we're going to move on to a couple of other little topics like photosynthesis, which I think I like just the word. But sometimes when you buy plants at the greenhouse, especially if it's later in the season, they will become what my grandma always called root bound. And you can look that up online. It is a thing. And what happens is they have so many roots that the roots kind of tangle with each other, get compacted, and they don't have enough room to spread out and give the plant the growth that they need. What my grandma always had me do, so if I got, for example, petunias, and they come in those 4-packs. So when you pull them out, they're a little rectangle, and you'll see a lot of white roots down behind. I actually looked at the store to see if they have petunias out yet, and they don't, because I was going to bring a petunia to show you this, but hopefully that'll be coming. When you pull it out, you're going to see a lot of white roots, especially down at the bottom. What Grandma always had me do was, she called it tickling the roots. And what we did is down at the very bottom where the roots are heaviest, just kind of take your fingers and break those up a little bit. You can even pull at them. Just don't get up in the main part of the root ball, just at the bottom, kind of tickle the roots, and then put it down in your soil. By tickling those roots, it kind of breaks up that mass compacted root right there and lets the roots start spreading out, getting into the soil, and you'll see your plant. And you can kind of tell when the roots take hold, because you'll watch your plant and it just kind of sits there and sits there and sits there. Once the roots come down and take hold of the ground, you'll see the plant start growing, putting out new growth, new leaves, new flowers if it's a flower, new blooms if it's a vegetable plant. Because in something else I want to hit on, keep in mind that your vegetables also have flowers. They're called blooms. So your vegetable plant, your beans, for example, are going to grow. When they get big enough, you're going to see little flowers set on. Each of those little flowers has the capability of becoming a bean. That's where the bean starts. You have the bloom. You'll see a little bitty bean start. The bloom will dry and fall off, and then the bean continues to grow till it's big enough to pick. So watch those. And like cucumbers, every one of those cucumber blossoms can become a cucumber. So watch those. And to me, it's really interesting. The beans, to me, are the most fun, because you'll see the purple flower, or whatever color your bean. Most of the bean I plant usually is a purple flower. And then you'll see the flower, and you'll see a little bitty bean, just a little bitty baby bean start out of it. Then your flower, your bloom will fall off, and then the bean continues to grow. So it's really interesting to watch the plants. And as you plant these, Sam, I encourage you to do that. Watch your plants closely. And my husband thinks I'm crazy because I go out every day and check my garden, simply because I like watching the progress. And from one day to the next, sometimes there's not a lot of progress, but it's really fun to watch those beans and see how big those little beans will grow in just a day. So just a little thing that you could watch for. Okay, we're going to talk about photosynthesis. And I wanted to, again, go back to some of our handouts. So this is the handout that covers kind of the video. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way here. This is kind of the video we just talked about, germination. And it has a picture of the bean down here with the embryo and all those things in it. There's some more information on the back of that sheet, so make sure and read through there if you want any more information in it. It's kind of a neat little worksheet, I think, and the video in it gives a lot of good information. We are now going to talk about, oh, of course, I wanted to review this. Don't forget, this talks about flowers that can be grown, growing from seeds, and one that can be transplanted. So make sure and refer to this because these are the plants right here, that you're going to want to look for at the greenhouses or the plants that you plant as plants. These are ones, and some of them are kind of getting a little bit late, but these are ones that you will want to, right here, those are ones you'll want to start from seed inside. They recommend you grow these and transplant these as plants, not directly out in the soil. Now these down here below, right here at the bottom, those are ones that they recommend you just go out, work up a spot, work up a flower pot, a bucket, whatever you're using to plant, and do those. And of course, don't forget with planting, always look at the frost dates because those are very important for many of these, okay? Any questions about any of that? Did you have any questions, Sam?
If you miss the transplanting, the 8 weeks before frost date or whatever, should you wait until, it's going to get a little cooler, or what do you think?
No, not necessarily. And those are dates that you would need to start the plants. So those sometimes, to be quite honest, I don't have any tomatoes planted. I'm planning on just either buying from the master gardeners out here or going to a local greenhouse and getting my tomatoes this year. I probably will just go right out here behind my office because they have all these really cool varieties. But I didn't even plant tomato seeds this year because I kind of missed that date that you're just talking about. And so with those kinds of things, so if you have a plant and it kind of gives you some ideas. And I even, the cucumbers, I probably will go ahead and I may go ahead and get some of those out as soon as it warms up enough to get them in the ground. But my herbs I'm buying as plants this year. I'm not starting them from seeds. And same with my tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and my cabbage and broccoli. I'm going to buy those already started. So that way I don't have to worry about that 8 weeks because like you said, we've already missed that, right? Because that's coming up quickly. Now you would still have time to start your cucumbers, your melons inside. And so if you're a melon person, I love cantaloupes. I'll probably get some cantaloupe started hopefully this next weekend or so. But keep in mind, those are ones that are kind of touchy with the frost, so you probably won't want to plant this till around Mother's Day. That was the rule of thumb my grandma always used, and it seems to hold true pretty much still today. If I really have plants that are touchy with the frost and the cold weather, I wait and plant those around Mother's Day. Have you ever grown sweet potato plants? Sam, has your family ever done that?
No.
It is so much fun. Let me tell you about that real quick, and then I'll get back to photosynthesis. This just makes me excited because I love sweet potatoes, number one. But you can actually get a sweet potato, and even from the grocery store. Most of those sweet potatoes are not treated. And what you do, I wish I'd have brought one. You take the sweet potato, and you find a container that it can kind of set down in and touch water. You just want about so much of the sweet potato and not very much. And then what I do is take toothpicks, and about halfway up the sweet potato, I make a circle of toothpicks. And they don't have to be very close together, just 4, 5, 6, and then set that sweet potato down in that container that you've got water. I have a little round cylinder vase that's not very tall, and that's usually what I use because the sweet potato fits nicely down in there, and the toothpicks hold it. But you set that in there, put it close to a sunny window if you can, and watch, and you'll start seeing sweet potatoes, sprouts, leaves, so actually the sweet potato plants come out of various places around the sweet potato. If you can, look for a sweet potato that has a lot of eyes, and by eyes I mean little indentations. Those are where the plants come from. What you can do with that one sweet potato is as the plant gets so big, so it has like 3 leaves, break it off and set it in a little container of water, just the bottom of it. The sweet potato sprouts you've taken off the actual sweet potato will grow roots. Then you just take those out, make a mound, plant them in the mound, and grow your own sweet potatoes. And it's really fun to watch the sweet potatoes send out all those plants, watch those plants take root so you can plant them. One sweet potato, and they just keep producing. As you break them off, they send more out. So one sweet potato is going to give you lots of plants if you keep watching it and keep the water touching the sweet potato and keep breaking those plants off and putting them over the root. Lots of fun. If you can, try that. I really enjoy that. I was thinking last week I need to get that going, even though, again, you don't plant those till around Mother's Day, so we've still got lots of time. Because you'll be surprised how many sweet potato plants you can get rooted in within just 3 weeks.
That sounds
Does that
fun.
sound-
Yeah, that
it
sounds
is.
cool.
It is very fun. And again, it's not real expensive to buy one sweet potato, and they're pretty easy to grow. I sometimes don't have time to do a lot of things, but this one's the one that's pretty simple. Mainly keep the water up on the sweet potato so it keeps getting that nutrient. Excuse me. And then when you break those off and put them in just a little bit of water, you don't put the whole plant in it, just the bottom about, I don't know, an inch or so. And then watch what happens. Watch those roots start forming. And it doesn't take very long. It's lots of fun. Okay. I better move on. I'm getting behind on what I actually wanted to present today. Sorry about that. What we're going to do next is we're going to look at the last handout, and it's a handout on photosynthesis. And we're going to talk about what photosynthesis is. Basically, it's carbon dioxide going in, and the plant converts that and releases oxygen. That's one reason plants are actually good for our environment. So when you grow a garden, you're actually helping the environment because those leaves use the sunlight in the water to go through photosynthesis, and we're going to watch a little video on that in just a second. So the carbon dioxide, which is more basically, I won't say poisonous, but not good for humans, goes in, the plant uses it and then releases oxygen, which who breathes oxygen? We do. So that helps purify and give us oxygen back in the air. So let me show you the video. I'm going to share my screen again. And there's the photosynthesis video. Okay, this is just a 4-minute video. So hopefully...
Hello kids, do you know how plants make their own food? No? Well, this video elaborates the process of photosynthesis, by which plants make their own food. Photosynthesis is the process used by plants to make their own food. Or in more complex terms, it is the conversion of light energy into chemical energy by plants. This chemical energy is used by the plants for growth and nourishment. Photo means light and synthesis means putting together in Greek. When humans cook food, some essential things are required, including fire, water, vegetables, etc. Similarly, to make their food, plants also need some essential factors, including light, water, nutrients, soil, etc. Plants get light from the sun, water from the ground, and carbon dioxide from the air. All of these factors, including air, water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight, together help plants churn out their own food. Plants have tubes called xylem, located in the stems through which the water from the ground is sucked into the leaves. This system works similar to humans sucking liquids through a straw. The xylem is spread throughout the different parts of the plant, including the stem, branches, and all the way up to the leaves. The xylem transports vital nutrients to the entire plant. Xylems in the plant are like blood vessels in the human body that act as an important means of transportation of water and nutrients. Leaves on the plant have pores, very similar to the pores on the skin of our bodies. These pores are called stomata. These stomata are responsible for the exchange of gases. The carbon dioxide present in the air, which is responsible for photosynthesis, enters the plant through these stomata. Oxygen also comes out through these stomata. Leaves have important cells called mesophyll cells. These cells contain a green color component called chloroplast. This chloroplast is responsible for the green color of plants and leaves. Once the carbon dioxide and the water reach the chloroplasts in the presence of sunlight, the process of photosynthesis starts to take place. The following reaction takes place in the leaves of the plant during photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of light energy results in oxygen plus glucose or carbohydrates. The products formed are glucose and oxygen. Carbohydrates, which are a form of glucose, are synthesized from carbon dioxide and water. Glucose is used by the plants for their growth. Some of the glucose is used immediately, and the extra glucose, which is not used, is stored in the form of starch in the leaves. Some amount of this extra glucose is also stored in the roots of the plants. This extra glucose is used to perform photosynthesis when there is no sunlight. Oxygen is given out into the air through the stomata in the process of photosynthesis. The oxygen that is released is used by human beings to breathe during their respiration process. Ever wondered why this process is called photosynthesis? Well, the word photosynthesis is a combination of two Greek words, photo and synthesis. Photo means light in Greek, and synthesis means putting together or combining. Hence, photosynthesis literally means combining water or carbon dioxide in the presence of light. So the essential factors for photosynthesis to take place include sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. Underwater photosynthesis takes place at a slower pace than the normal photosynthesis. This is because energy from the sun is absorbed by the water layers and only some amount of energy actually reaches the plant. There are some plants which don't need the process of photosynthesis to grow. Such plants include mushroom, Venus flytraps, etc. Mushrooms get their food from the ground and from their surrounding areas. Venus flytraps trap and catch small insects which come near the leaves and eat them. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more cool science videos.
Okay, let me close that video. Okay, what do you think, Sam? Did that teach you a little bit more about photosynthesis?
No, I knew the whole thing.
You knew the whole thing? That's good. But that is why plants are so important to the environment. And that's one reason the garden are good for you. Plus, what do you think about the food you buy versus the food you pick out of your garden? Which do you think has been proven to be more nutritious for you?
Food from your garden.
Food from your garden. There's nothing better than a fresh tomato from the garden, in my opinion. I love tomatoes. Green beans the same way. One of my favorite things out of the garden is fresh green beans. And of course, I eat green beans during the winter, but they're not quite up to par when it comes comparing them to my green beans from my garden. So if I grow nothing else, I always grow tomatoes and I always grow green beans. Something else I really like are fresh cucumbers. I love cucumbers anyway, but there's just something a little bit different about that taste in your garden cucumber. What I'd like you to do is make sure, and we're not going to go over this handout per se, but look at this handout. It gives you a little more information, has a little exercise, if you will. It kind of explains what photosynthesis is, and it kind of helps you understand the plant germinates. It talked about that. Then it goes through photosynthesis, and that is how the plant actually progresses and continues to maturity. That is also how you'll end up with your vegetables or your flowers, because that is the maturity piece of the plant growth. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about, in your bag, you should have gotten a flower pot. And you should hopefully have enough soil left that I want you to do, and we don't have to do it right now, but take that flower pot, and what is the difference between that flower pot and this tube?
The flower pot is bigger and not biodegradable.
Okay, very good. So we're not going to be able to take that flower pot out and put it down in the garden soil, right? That just won't work. But what you can do with your flower pot is use it to grow something smaller. you actually could put one of these, it's not a very big flower pot, but you actually could sprinkle a few radish seeds, and you could leave those radishes in there, keep them watered in the sunlight, and they would actually grow till you could pull them, and when they get looking like this, you can pull them, wash them off, and eat them. So you could plant a few radishes in that flower pot. You can also put a cucumber, something like that, because remember, we start those inside, then we plant them out. It's better to grow them inside than it is put them directly into the soil. That's on our list. So you could start a cucumber, especially this Bushmaster, because, or Space Master with the bush type, it won't get real big. And when it gets to a certain point and starts kind of sending out more bush, where it's, you can tell, you'll be able to look at it and see it's getting too big for the flower pot. You can take it out, and it should have enough of a root system. You can carefully remove it from the flower pot. Remember to tickle the roots if you need to. So if there's a compaction underneath the root ball, you can tickle them just a little bit, then put them in a mound of dirt. Now, my grandma, and you can read about this, it will tell you on the back of the package how to put it. This says to sow an average well-drained soil. Now, and it talks about putting 3 inches apart in hills, 36 inches apart. What do you think a hill is out in the garden?
Like a higher area.
Very good. So what you do is you take your garden tool, your hoe or whatever you're using, and you scrape just a little bit of dirt up, and you make a little mound of dirt. It doesn't have to be very tall. What this does is help the roots spread out more, because it has that extra loose dirt and that extra room. Then your roots will go on down and hit the harder soil and continue to grow. But the mound, if you read the back of your package, it says something about planting in hills. If I remember right, the zucchini's the same way. Well, it doesn't say to do that, so you don't have to do a zucchini in a hill. I usually plant my squash, including my zucchini, in a hill as well. But definitely your cucumbers. The sweet potato plants we talked about, Grandma calls it a ridge, but basically it's a big long hill. So wherever you're going to put your sweet potato plants, you go out and you mound dirt up from both sides. So you make a ridge. The reason you do the sweet potatoes in a ridge is because when they start growing, what do you think the mature part of the sweet potato is? Where is it located?
We're not.
Whoops. You muted again.
We're not sure.
Okay, what happens, potatoes grow their fruit or their vegetable underground. So by putting that ridge up and planting your sweet potatoes in the top of your ridge, that lets the root go down, and then your little sweet potatoes actually grow off of the root. So any potato actually grows underground. Another little thing that I'm just going to share, my grandma and grandpa always grew peanuts, actually right here in Missouri. And those peanuts grow underground as well. So what you do is you let those potatoes or sweet potatoes or peanuts or whatever grow. And then when it becomes time, you go out and you dig the sweet potatoes. In other words, you're going to get rid of that ridge of dirt, and you're going to find all kinds of sweet potatoes attached to that one sweet potato plant. So one sweet potato plant will grow multiple mature potatoes. So one sweet potato sprout that you got off the sweet potato and rooted and went and planted will spread roots, and off those roots will grow the potato itself. And I mean, 5-10 potatoes off of one plant. So that's why you don't have to plant very many sweet potato plants, because you get a lot back out of it. Now, if you don't have a big garden spot with space to put up a big ridge, you can actually put these in big containers, not put very many. For example, I have a plastic, it looks kind of like a wooden barrel, half wooden barrel. I've actually grown them in there. One thing you have to remember is to make sure the dirt has a lot of straw or something that lets it be loose, because the sweet potato has to have that loose dirt to grow the potato out in. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so our flower pot. What do you think you're going to plant in your flower pot, Sam?
We had a question, but it
Yes, what is it? What?
So when you're talking about when you plant stuff in mounds and ridges, what's the best way to water those to where it doesn't just dissolve that mound away?
You have to be very careful and sprinkle. I a lot of times will use, you know, the big water cans with the sprinkler end on it. I'll actually put it in my water can or my watering, whatever device you want to call it, that has the big sprinkle sprout, and very carefully sprinkle. You're right, you can't wash that away. You have to sprinkle it. The good news is if we get enough rain, sweet potatoes are also pretty drought resistant. So a little bit of dryness won't hurt them, but I also, my dear sweet husband found me an end for my hose that has a very gentle, what they call the mist setting. So I can actually take my garden hose out now, make sure that wand with that end is on it, turn it to the mist setting, and just go out and lightly water those mounds and those hills of things. Because you're completely right. If you just take water out there and dump it, as you've already figured out, the mound or the hill just goes away.
Okay.
So just be careful. And another thing we did for my grandson, because he really likes to help, and he was 5, he's 6 now, but last year we took a bottle. It was a Lipton tea bottle. It doesn't matter, but a heavier bottle than just a water bottle. You know how some of the water bottles are pretty thin plastic. We found a Lipton tea bottle that's a little bit heavier, and my husband took and drilled little holes in it, in the top lid. And so my grandson could take the tea bottle, fill it up with water, put that lid back on it, then walk around and sprinkle my flowers and my plants for me. So he watered he watered my cucumber. And again, we're recycling, reusing. I still have that bottle. I haven't thrown it away. So I'm not putting plastic back out in the system. We ended up having to making 3 because he had different things to water. He'd forget where he put his water bottle, his sprinkle bottles, as he calls them. So my husband made him 3 sprinkle bottles, and we have those out already because he likes to help water the cucumbers and those kinds of things. And those actually work pretty well. And you don't have to have a lot of, and the holes are very small. My husband had a very small drill bit he used that just makes small little holes and make a little sprinkle bottle right out of those little bit heavier plastic bottles. A pop bottle would work, obviously.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it works out well. My husband and my grandson actually came up with it. Okay, any other questions?
Well, Cindy, I don't know if this is the time to ask.
I don't think so right now.
Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
What was that, Sam?
We don't have any more questions right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Sam, what have you learned today? Can you tell me something you've learned, you or one of your siblings?
We learned about photosynthesis.
Okay.
And where to plant seeds.
Okay, good. Are you going to do any of the things we talked about, you think?
Well, I'm planting radishes.
Oh, cool. Cool. That's neat. Are you going to try the sweet potato? I'm just kind of curious.
Probably.
Yeah, I think we'd like to.
It's, like I said, it's lots of fun. There's other things you can do that with, and you can Google that, but you can take an avocado seed and actually grow an avocado plant. It takes a long time. Avocados are very slow growing, but you can actually, the same premise, you take the seed, put toothpicks in it so it keeps approximately half of it out of the water, then lower it into a vase or a container with water. And the avocado will actually grow a plant. It's kind of neat to see.
Yeah, my mom grew one when I was a teenager that way. It got a couple feet high, I think. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It is cool. I've never been patient enough. My avocado just never, I guess I probably rush it too much, and it's like, okay, it's not growing, I get rid of it. I need to take my time because I think that's really cool. Lemon seeds are another thing you can plant. We'll actually grow little lemon trees, those kinds of things. We actually, when I would live at home on the farm when I was young, we had an apricot seed. They called it a seedling tree, and I never could figure out what they meant. And they had taken an apricot pit and planted it, and it grew a tree. And he planted it, and the tree was very old even when I was young. But the only thing different, it grew good apricots. They tasted really good, but they were just a little bit smaller. So the research I've kind of done, seedlings sometimes tend to produce smaller fruit, just simply because it's not from the original apricot tree, for example. But you can actually grow trees from about anything that has a seed if you're patient enough and give them the right conditions.
Yeah, you'd have to be for a tree, huh?
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, any other questions?
Cindy, I have a question. You had mentioned containers for gardening, and we may just get you to maybe come back for a program on that. But just briefly, with 5-gallon containers, if I wanted to do something like tomatoes, do I have to worry about making holes in the bottom for drainage, or can I just use the 5-gallon bucket as it is for something like tomatoes or peppers?
Okay, that's a good question, Anali, and I'll tell you what I've done. And I've done it with I talked about the plastic barrels, but they look like half oak barrels. Make sure and put something in the bottom that will allow the water to go down and soak back up. For example, I've used plastic peanuts out of packing, not the ones that disintegrate in water, obviously, but the original kind. I've actually used smashed plastic bottles and those kinds of things. I smash them, I don't leave them whole, but just those kinds of things. You can use rock. One thing I will tell you, if you use rock, it gets very heavy very quickly. So if it's something you want to move, the rock makes it almost difficult to move. But you can use various things. I've used in broken flower pots down in the bottom before. So anything that kind of lifts the dirt up, so the roots that are growing down in the dirt aren't actually setting down in that water. So you can also drill holes in the bottom of your bucket. You can do that as well. But a lot of times, rather than ruin the container, because I never know for sure what I'm going to do with it, I'll just put things in the bottom about so far up. Like my barrel, I think I have about that much stuff in the bottom, then I covered the rest of it with dirt. Does that help?
That is exactly what I needed to know. Thank you.
And I really like it because it helps you recycle more stuff, right?
I love the tips you've given us. I've taken so many notes. I mean, the tickling the roots, I never thought of it. It makes so much sense. The growing sweet potatoes, as you said, just, starting with one you have, the sprinkle bottle, the hardening the plants. This is excellent.
Yeah, gardening's fun, but there's a lot more to it than just going and throwing stuff in the dirt. There really is to have a really good, successful garden. Now, and I did go into soil testing and making sure your soil has the right nutrients and all that stuff. That's above this level, but yeah.
Well, you've given us a lot to help set us up for success, so we do have that insight to get started. Thank you so much.